Right, so I'm just going to set up with all the things that I'm likely to need. So this is a 4 corny keg, so 4 19-litre corny keg volumes. So obviously got the 4 taps here. So I've got 2 secondary regulators that have come from the malt miller. I'm going to be having a couple of John Guest fittings, so a splitter on each of those, but I've also got a 3-way split as well, just to give me a bit of flexibility depending on what what beers I'm carbonating at any one time. So I could potentially have a 3-way split on one of the secondary regulators and just some piping coming out of the secondary regulator. I've got some 3/8 outside diameter gas line, so Valpar is the make. A bunch of John Guest 3/8 equal elbow fittings. So I've got a bunch of those because I'm not exactly sure how many I'm going to need. So I'm making this up as I'm going along. I don't really want to be drilling holes in the Keezer again. So anything, to make it less invasive is going to be useful. So if I need to just kind of reroute the pipe work inside the Keezer and outside the Keezer, then hopefully these are going to come in useful. And last but not least, I've got just a wrench. Now I don't need those, I don't think, for the second regulators. But I've also got a fresh gas tank coming today as well, so what better time to do this work. But yeah, obviously the wrench is to screw the primary regulator back onto the CO2 canister. Right, so let's crack these open and see what we've got. Right, so here we go. Immediately I can tell, I mean, these are the premium regulators from the malt miller in the UK, and you can already tell the build quality rather, is significantly better than what is on my primary regulator. Now, I guess you don't need a Rolls Royce, or I don't at least, but it's nice to see that the build quality is rather nice. Okay, so straight out of the box, this is what you get, right? So you get your second regulator, you've got John Guest fittings on all 3 kind of connection points. You also get a plug to kind of, plug the gap once you've kind of daisy chained these together. So if I've understood correctly, the pressure that's set on the primary regulator should go in here and out there, and the pressure stays the same and gets passed on to the next secondary regulator unless you terminate. And you turn this, and let's say the primary regulator is set to 20 psi. I can set this to say 11 or 12 psi, and that's what I'm going to get out of this spout here. If it does go into another secondary regulator, then that's going to be 20 psi as well. And again, you'll twist the dial and you can set that to 15 psi should you choose. So hopefully I've understood that correctly. Let's let's have a look inside, see where these are going to line up. Let's start thinking about installing them. Just a point to note as well is that, rather disappointingly for the price, they don't come with any fixing screws. So just make sure you've got a couple of spare screws to hand, or if you've not, then you're going to have to buy some. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get this open. The Keezer is still kind of active, the temperature is still kicking on and off because I've got some live kegs in here. So I'm just going to have to work around some of the piping that's in here, so like the beer lines and things. But the first thing I'm going to do anyway, and hopefully you can kind of see that down here, this is where the piping comes into the Keezer from the CO2 tank. That's currently connected to a manifold, a 4-5-way manifold. So I'm going to pull that out, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I have wrestled out the manifold, as you can see. I've got all the disconnects on there. So I'm just going to kind of unplug these pipes, and hopefully I can reuse them with the secondary regulators. I just need to obviously cut the pipes down to size. Now unfortunately I wasn't able to get hold of an actual pipe cutter, so I'm just going to have to use a very sharp knife. Right, so sight checking this, I'm probably looking to come around here. Now hopefully you can see that, but that's pretty much level with where my current pipe is, so that's just going to go straight across. So I'm not going to come in at an angle, I don't need to use elbow joints or anything like that. If I go too high, this kind of protrusion on the lid, that's just going to clatter against that. So I've marked out the location for the first regulator. So what I've done So I've already put a stem on it. So I'm going to actually bore the holes with the brad awl, fix this one, connect the secondary regulator to this one whilst it's in situ, and then mark out the secondary regulator. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now, and I'll be right back. Right, now that we've got the both secondary regulators in situ, I'm going to feed in the pipe that's going to come from the CO2 tank. So if you can kind of see down here, it's going to come in at the side. Now because it is a bit of a tight squeeze where I have the Keezer kind of up against the wall, I don't really want a tight bend on the CO2 pipe, the gas line. So I'm definitely going to be using an elbow joint there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of feed in the gas line, mark it up to kind of where it comes out, and then I'm just going to add on a couple of extra centimetres so that obviously I can make sure that I can, I've got enough wiggle room to push the pipe into the actual fitting itself. So I'm just going to do that now. Okay, just line that up in there, just give it a good push, make sure it goes in. There we go. So I'm just going to mark it up to about here, and then I'll add on a couple of centimetres. Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to put the elbow joint on first, click it in, just to make it a little bit easier to push it in, like that. I've got a little bit of leverage here. Okay, there we go. So I've probably got about a mil, maybe two to spare. So I've cut it quite tight actually, but that has just gone in there solidly, so that is absolutely perfect. Okay, so with that out of the way, I'm going to start looking at the internal side of things. So I've got a couple of choices and I'm not fully decided exactly what I'm going to do. So I think I'm going to go with one three-way, so kind of 3 kegs at the same pressure, and one with just a gas line and disconnect coming out to the second regulator. I mean, like I said before, I could have just 2 of these, so 2 kegs, both kind of lots of 2 at different pressures. So just the way my setup is, I think I'm going to go for this. I might then have a couple more stems on the bottom to then connect some elbow joints to. Okay. The only reason for that is just so I don't have kind of a gas line looping round or going over kind of, severe angles over to the kegs. Just going to keep it tidier. But yeah, I'm going to get this in first, have a little play around with it and see what I think. So let's get this in first. So I had to have a little bit of a play around. I decided to go for the 3 and the 1. And I did decide to go for the elbow joints in the end, just to kind of make the connections a little bit easier so they didn't have to kind of bend stuff around. Although, as you can see, that is still happening to you know, to a degree. So this one's going to come kind of bend round and go on top here for this one that's going to stand on the sledge. But for the most part, the other ones are, you know, fairly straight. A bit of a kink in this one. Yeah, it probably could be neater if I kind of went around the edges, but I think for now this is fine. It's certainly a hell of a lot neater than it was, so I'm pretty pleased with how it's looking. So what I'm going to do now is, you can see we've got the kind of the stock end there, is I'm going to test for leaks quickly whilst this isn't in position. If you can see back through there, we've got the CO2 tank. Just checking back in very quickly. So I've got all the gas lines connected now, all the beer lines connected. I did just have a bit of a rejig with my kegs. So this keg here is going off the kind of the single line at the moment. And the reason is because that is a fresh keg, so I'm actually going to carb it higher. So historically I carbed and served and poured at 10 psi. So now I've got the luxury of carbing that higher for a few days before I lower the pressure. And yeah, now that everything's connected, it is starting to look a little bit neater. Could be neater still, but certainly for another day. Moment of truth. Let's turn the gas canister itself on. Right, they fasten that tight, because they're to my hand. Anyway, hopefully you can see the tank's at 800 psi. Got a full tank, so let's turn the regulator. And I'm just going to set it around. I've probably gone too far already. I'm just going to set it around probably, I don't know, 20. And let the secondary regs do the talking. Okay. We're creeping up, that'll do. Right, so I'm just going to spray a bit of Star San on the connector, the main regulator connection and this elbow joint. So Star San, a sterilising agent, but also a foaming agent. So yeah, you can get leak detection sprays, but this isn't Star San branded, but that's what's inside. Okay. No bubbles, we are good, and there's no hissing either, so that's also a good sign. I'm going to do the inside of the Keezer now. So there we go, that is how I installed my 2 secondary regulators into my Keezer. I've not put it back into its actual position just yet, so I think in the previous segment I'd set the PSI to around 20, just under, on the primary regulator, and it's crept up and up and up. So I've vented it a couple of times and tweaked the valve. It's currently sat around kind of 32, which isn't a problem. I just don't want it to kind of creep up indefinitely. So we'll see how that goes. The secondary regulators are pretty steady, at around kind of 5 and 15 psi respectively for the first and the second one, or right to left as you look at the Keezer. So there you go. Got to keep an eye on it, have a beer whilst I wait. And yeah, there you go. I've totally winged it, as you've seen. But hopefully, you know, it gives you a bit of an idea of what to do. The day's gone as I expected it to, so no major surprises. Could it be tidier in there? Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, for what I need at the moment, that is, yeah, job done. I'm signing it off. There you go. Right, I'm going to sign off as well. Enjoy a few beers and then get to bed. So if you found the content useful, you like the video, please do drop, you know, some kind comments, give me a like, share, subscribe, and I will see you guys soon. Take care.